Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced of alexmerced.com, alexmercedcoder.dev. I'm not a hard person to find. Now, basically, I work as the head of DevRel at Dremio, and one part of your job as a DevRel, developer advocate, evangelist, is to create content to educate people about the technicals of a particular product or technology, because the idea is that if people understand things better, they're more likely to adopt them. Okay. Now, as a DevRel, I'm going to talk about how you can use AI tools to really accelerate yourself as a DevRel. Okay. But this does not change the fact that you need to know whatever it is you're advocating for. And you need to know, basically, you need to know what you're talking about, bottom line. One, it's going to be harder for you to manage sort of what you generate with the tools that I'm going to be talking about if you don't know what you're talking about. And when you do like live presentations, you're going to be caught many times as answering questions you have no idea how to answer. So, bottom line is you do need to understand what you are talking about and get hands-on with the tools that you're advocating for. But even with that, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about is going to help you do that as well. Okay, so let's start. Bottom line, I'm going to use the example of Zig. I'm not an advocate or an evangelist for Zig. I'm using it as a technology that's probably like not super saturated. Like, I don't think as many people really know about Zig as something like JavaScript or Ruby or Rust, as far as like programming languages go. And I think I can kind of illustrate the point here. Okay. So bottom line is like the first tool I really want to focus in on, like pretty much everything I want to talk about is going to be very Google oriented, just because that's what I've been playing with a lot lately. So first thing we're talking about is NotebookLM. So you just go to notebooklm.google. Okay, and now this tool is going to the first use case we're going to talk about is how this is going to help you understand what you're talking about and know what you're talking about. Try NotebookLM. Okay, we click here. Then this brings us to your NotebookLM pages where you can see all your notebooks. You're going to create a new notebook. Okay, we're going to call this my Zig notebook. We'll add some sources in a moment. I'll just rename this my Zig notebook. I know nothing about Zig other than it's a programming language. Zig notebook. So basically, this is again trying to do this sort of as a fresh, if I were like a fresh DevRel, how could I use this to kind of enhance my workflow? So first step I would do is I would go to the documentation. Okay, and I would begin adding all these pages as sources. Okay, first kind of understand like, hey, is everything on its own page? So this all looks like it's one big page, which is really good because it means you have to add less. So I can just kind of go back to the latest versions. Let's go to master. Okay. And then I can just go over here, copy this link, and then go to add sources. And you can upload, if you have a PDF of it, you can add that there. Websites, videos, you can copy arbitrary text in there. We'll be using that in a moment. But I'm just going to put in this website here. Okay. And for now, that's all I really need, okay? Because, I mean, that's like the full documentation all on one page. That makes life a lot easier. Okay, so first thing I might want to do is first, like, I'm new. Let's say I got hired as a Zig DevRel. I'm day one. I really want to understand what Zig is, okay? I can just start having a conversation with this notebook about what is Zig. What is Zig? Okay? And the thing is that it's going to have much more context because what NotebookLM is doing is it's not just scouring, like, all the information that the model has and hopefully figuring it out. It's using specifically your sources to understand your question and answering your questions based on the sources that you gave it. Okay. And so here's explaining it to me and whatnot. Okay. And then basically at this point, I would spend some time really kind of reading through this, having a conversation with the notebook to kind of really understand it. And if reading is not your thing, then you have a couple different options. You can click here and create an audio overview. Okay, which will kind of create a podcast of two people kind of explaining the topic to you, or you can do a video overview where it creates like a video with a slide presentation and narration over it. Now, here's the thing, though. If I just click this button, it's just going to create an audio overview of the topic of all my sources in general. What I can do is I can click the pen and I can make it more specific. Okay, I can make it be a deep dive. I can say how long I want it, and I can over here type a prompt saying, hey, I only want to focus on the type system of Zig. Maybe new to a new programming language, type systems are going to be really important. So maybe I really want to understand like Zig's type system. So I really just want a podcast where these two podcasters are just specifically talking about the type system and going through the different types. Okay. Now I can go listen to it while I do my morning walk or jog or whatever, or wash the dishes or doing laundry. You can listen to this, and then basically you're helping beef your mind up on the thing that you need to know. Okay, so that would be like my advice on how to use this for like a new DevRel. You just got hired. You need to understand your technology. This is a great way to start really kind of getting up to speed quickly. You still have to go get hands on though. Okay, don't skip that part. Okay, cool. Now you're at the point where you feel like really comfortable with your technology and you need to create content. And there's a lot of different content you need to make. You need to make blogs. You need to make social posts. You need to do presentations and live. NotebookLM has you covered there in several different ways. Okay, so in this case, one, I can click reports. Now, in this case, for like blog writing, you're going to want some sort of style guide. So you either want to, and ideally you have other blogs you've already written, and then you can like feed that into either, again, a separate notebook or into Gemini or to ChatGPT or Claude, and ask it to kind of create a description of your writing style. So that way you have that already to go. I'm gonna simplicity. I just literally Googled like a writing style prompt just right now, and I'm just gonna literally just copy and paste this just to kind of illustrate the point. Copy, and then I'm gonna head back to NotebookLM and add as a source. Click here, copy text, paste this in here, and I'm going to insert that. Okay. So now what I can do is I can go over here to the report and say, hey, I need a blog post, and say, hey, there it has this initial prompt that's helpful, so I'm going to keep that. I want to write a blog post on Zig data types that adheres to my natural writing guide. Okay, and I'm going to copy this real quick. I'm going to hit generate. And that's going to generate a report. So that's going to take a second. So we're going to let that do that. I'm going to show you a couple other ways to create content here. You can also generate an infographic. Okay, so I can click here. I can just click an infographic, and then it's just going to create an infographic based on everything. Or I can click on the pen so I get specific. Now, in this case, you may want to figure out what your company's color scheme is. So in this case, I might, what I would do is take a screenshot of my company's website, put it into ChatGPT Gemini, and say, hey, can you describe me the aesthetics of this? Absent that, I do have a tool called here, colortheme.alexmerced.app. And I can just hit here and generate new themes. So I see like a color scheme that I like. Okay, let's use that. And I'm going to just copy that theme into here. And I'm going to say, using this color scheme, generate an infographic about Zig data types. Okay, and that's going to generate an infographic again. We'll show that once that's revealed. And then the last piece is I could generate a whole slide deck. Okay, and I can use that color theme to there too. I can just be like, using the color theme, generate a slide deck on Zig data types. Okay, cool. And now we have that going. So I'm gonna let those generate. So I'm gonna pause the video and then we'll come back to once those are all generated. Okay, so the blog post is finished generating. So let's take a look at that. So why is Zig turning heads? 5 language features that feel like the future. Okay, goodbye processor. Although this looks like a general blog, so I don't know if it followed my prompt talking specifically about the type system. Integer overflow is not a choice. I guess it gave me 5 issues based on the type system, but this is all right. This is cool. Now again, what I would do is I would copy this into a doc and then refine it. Like, I mean, just looking at it, it looks like it has followed the writing style guide pretty decently. Okay, I'm not seeing any immediate red flags. Usually, if you've read enough AI written pieces, sort of like there's certain like little giveaways, like this right here, like in the landscape of modern, like the sentences that start with like in the this, or a high usage of like M dashes. There's like certain things that are just like sort of like, okay, Not that it matters at the end of the day. Like at the end of the day, what matters is that you write something that people can learn from. That's at the end of the day. Like I think people get too hung up on authorship. Again, I've been doing DevRel for over 4 years and doing a lot of blog writing even earlier than that. And I wrote a lot of, I've written hundreds of blogs by hand. And honestly, like I do like some of the blogs where I wrote less by hand better because I was able to kind of just go more in depth and cover more ground. And again, those who followed my DevRel podcast know like sort of my previous approach would be I would learn something. So essentially, like I would do to be effective to kind of create a flywheel of quick sort of content, effective content. Basically, what I would do is create things as I learn, where I would learn something, write a blog as I learn it, and then take and the blog would be a tutorial. Then I would take that tutorial, record a video on it. So I'm repeating to do it again. So that way I have another piece of content. So now I've learned a thing, I've written a blog, whatnot, and then from there I can create other bits of content. Okay. But again, not all content is necessarily tutorial content. There's like thought leadership content, it's general conceptual content, whatnot, where this is like kind of fills that kind of gap. Okay. Now, okay, so we got a good blog here. Again, it's very focused on Zig. It looks all good. Again, I would spend some more time kind of like verifying that everything looks right and take a look at my source and compare it to the actual article that's generated to make sure that everything it's covering is accurate. The more you do that, the more confident you'll feel and the quicker you'll be able to do it because you'll know the topic good enough that you won't have to go back and refer to the sources. So when I'm working with topics that I evangelize, a lot of times like I know the topic pretty well in and out. So I know I don't have to necessarily compare it to my sources as much as I just need to read the piece and I can catch the mistakes, I can catch the inaccuracies. Not always perfect. So again, you always still want to do the work, but again, it's a process. It's a learned skill. Okay, so that's like the blog, and again, we can go easily copy that over to like Google Docs. And here's like the infographic. So we have a nice infographic on Zig data types. Like this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted, and that nice color scheme that we gave it. Okay, and it's showing me the different primitive types, like the composite types. Perfect. So this gives me like a clear, quick way of seeing like sort of like what someone writing Zig is going to be using as far as like their data types. Okay, awesome. And the slide deck is still generating, so we'll give that a second. Now let me just point out a few other things. Like there's data tables. This is like the newest feature, and this is really cool because I know there's been times where I'm doing a lot of research and I'm putting together like a Google spreadsheet based on like 10 different sources, and I'm constantly having to like switch tabs to kind of find all these different sources and try to make them comparable and all this stuff. Here you can give it all the sources, tell it the data set you're trying to generate, and it'll go generate it for you in a Google spreadsheet, which is pretty sweet. There's some other features. I haven't really used these, but like flashcards, quizzes. This is just going to be more helpful if you're learning the topic. Okay, but now the slide deck will eventually generate, but the caveat about using NotebookLM to generate a slide deck is that the slide deck it generates isn't a Google presentation slide deck, so you can't really edit it. It's just basically a bunch of images that you can present, and they're generally really good, but you may want a presentation that you can edit. So this is where we bring in Gemini. Okay, so let me head over to Gemini. Okay, and again, you should be able to do this with like a free account. You don't necessarily need an Ultra account like myself. Okay, I have my personal Google Ultra account because I also use, like Antigravity to build like tooling and things like that a lot. And I'm just really, really power using this. Okay. But now what you can do here, there's two things. Like there's a lot of different things you can do as far as like what you can add for context in Google Gemini. So those notebooks that we just create in NotebookLM, I can just bring that over. So I don't have to go reattach those sources. So I can actually use NotebooksLM to kind of create little bundles of sources that I can quickly attach to a Gemini chat. So in this case, here's my Zig notebook. Okay, so I attach that. So that's going to provide it the context. Now what I want to do is I want to create a slide deck. And there's a tool for that called, I guess they just added that. Nice. Which is going to be Canvas. Okay, so Canvas will actually create a slide deck for you. Now, again, you can create images, which is pretty good. Create videos, like little 3-second videos. Deep Think and Deep Research are super useful for doing research. I'll use that a lot of times for blogs on like current news and things like that. So that way it goes and researches like the current news, and then I take it from there. But let's use Canvas. Okay, so cool. Now I got the Canvas tool on. I got the Zig notebook on, and I'm going to say, hey, generate a presentation on Zig data types using the color scheme of the Zig website. Okay, I'm gonna let it do that. And again, right over here, you see, you saw the Zig website. And if I just go back to like the main Zig website, we can see this color scheme, or left a D there at the end there. Fix that. Okay, so we can see. So we'll see if, hey, does it actually do that? Let me go back to Notebook. Okay, has finished the slide deck, so we can see what the slide deck looks like. And again, see, it's followed the color scheme that I gave it, which is really nice. Okay, giving us cool images and generates a really nice slide deck. So in this case, like again, covering the data types. Okay, and again, I can read through this for myself to learn. But now, if I'm in the speaking circuit and I'm speaking about whatever topic, I used to spend hours creating slide decks, because I would do like an original talk for like almost every event. Like a lot of people like present, and I do present a lot of different talks several times. I do have certain talks that just get picked up a lot, but I create a lot of different topics. So that required me to create a lot of different slide decks, and I would spend days just creating slide decks. So it's like literally, and then, you know, I'm not an artist, so they wouldn't look like super fancy. They would be a lot of sort of squares with lines connecting squares. But with this, you get this like really nice deck. So let's say I already know. So basically the approach I would take with this is like, okay, I have this topic I'm going to talk about. I would probably write the blog first and then use the blog as the source. So that way it creates the narrative around your narrative in the blog. Okay. And now you have a presentation about the topic that you've written on, and you can go out and like present on it easily. Okay, and then you can also, of course, you know, use Gemini to kind of like generate like talk abstract, talk titles, or ideas for talks, or ideas for blogs, all this kind of good stuff. But you see, like, this is pretty nice, but the problem is I can't edit it. I can download it, and it'll download it as a bunch of images. There's actually a presentation mode in here. I think it's, yeah, right here, start slideshow. I can click this, and then, you know, I can present it like a normal slide deck, although I'm on the last slide. So I can go here, and I can present it, and this is fine. But yeah, but sometimes you just want a deck that you can edit, so that way you can clean up, because you'll see here like 90%, I would say, like when you look at these slide decks, like they are actually impressively good as far as like spelling and accuracy. You know, and again, this is actually a fairly new feature. I think they've only added this whole slides thing to NotebookLM in like the last month. Once I discovered it, it's been like my favorite toy, because another thing you can use slides for is not just for presenting. They make really good LinkedIn content as well. Okay, so it's done the presentation. Look, see, like this looks really nice. So it looks like the Zig website. Okay, and if I flip through the slides, okay, it goes through the data types, nice. And now I can export this to slides. So it's gonna actually create in slides where I can actually go like edit it. And you can see like this is really, really pretty. Okay, and it's going to export it to slides, and then I can, you know, cool. Okay, so now I can go open the slides, and there we go. And now I have actual editable slides that I can use and work with, and this is fantastic. Okay, and this is like this actually didn't really start using until today. Like this is literally what I was playing with the moment before I started recording this video. So this is gonna be part of like definitely part of my arsenal going forward. And this is only like scratching the surface of what's possible, but just with this, like my workflow as a DevRel, my productivity as a DevRel is increasingly accelerated. There's still a lot of work to do, because I have to go arrange and apply the talk. I have to make sure that my personal knowledge is constantly sharp. practice delivering talks, coming up with topics to write about, make sure that I stay topical, but I can focus on being on the edge instead of struggling to keep up with what is. And that's one of I think, to me, the power of being really embracing the tools to increase your productivity. Because again, I can now focus on making sure that my knowledge is on the edge of what is, so that way I can truly be a thought leader, because I can spend my time thinking about what is coming, where are the trends, where are things moving towards, what are the topics that people aren't talking about yet, much faster. I can dedicate a lot more of those cycles to sort of being anticipating whatnot. And again, I can also you can use a lot of this to like generate, like, for example, things I'll do is like, let's say I'm posting on, let's say I wanted to post on the Zig Reddit channel. Generate me 10 questions I can ask on the Zig Reddit channel to generate discussion. And it'll generate me some questions, and like once a day, or once periodically, I'll go post that question, generate discussion, to help again make sure that I'm a present part of the community. Okay, etc. Okay, there's more you can do. So for example, like I've been using Google's Antigravity IDE to generate like tooling, like CLIs and whatnot. Let me see if I can create a quick example over here. Open folder. Let's say here, let's just say quick CLI tool. Okay, save, open. Okay. That's loading. So with Google's Antigravity, it's like for coding, whatnot. I used to have to make a lot of these tools handwritten. Again, it's best if you do know how to do these things by hand. Like if you know how to do them the long way, you're going to be much more effective than doing them the short way, because you know what the nuances are and the things you need to plan for. Like if you just came in here and said, code me up something, you're not going to know, hey, how do I distribute this, and think about how the Pi project toml should look like, or what dependencies should I use, or should I even think about dependencies, and how can dependencies conflict. Like I know those things, so I can be really effective using this. So again, if you haven't built software at all, this isn't going to necessarily be like a perfect shortcut, but so you should still build maybe some small pieces of software so you can understand the whole process. But once you understand the whole process, this can accelerate you quite a bit. So let me show you an example. Let's say the first step I would do, usually I'd write up a full spec, but I'm going to show you I'll do the quick version of it. Say, hey, I wanted to create a to-do list CLI tool in Python. Okay, and I should be able to create, delete, update, and review to-dos in different categories, and export them as JSON files and import them as JSON files. Can you write me a spec for this application in Python in this folder as a file called app.spec.md. Okay, so then it's going to go do that. Like, it's literally, I told it to do that. Now it's going to go do that. Because again, I have a blank folder, so I have a blank canvas. Okay, so now it's generated like a spec. Basically, like, hey, a description, hey, this is the app that I want to build. I'm going to read this and edit this to match what I'd like. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that not all of this sounds like copacetic, makes sense. Okay. Use represent a local JSON file, e2dos.json, or local folder. I guess that's fine. I mean, I would probably change it to SQLite and if I had more time, but the idea is like, okay, it's going to persist it as that. And Then I can see the examples of what the interface will look like. Okay, cool. I might give it some more detail saying, hey, I would like this in one file because I do not plan on distributing this within Py, which is basically where you distribute like Python libraries. I plan on just using the Python file as is. For example, Python, show an example of what the command would be. So in this case, like, hey, there's a command called like list. It would be something like Python, to do CLI.py list. Okay, and that way it understands sort of like how it gives it more context for us, like what the end state's going to be. So for like a really simple tool, like you may want to make, like, for example, if you're dealing with some sort of like online platform that has an API, building a CLI for interacting with that API could be a really good project. For sort of, again, being a good DevRel, because the idea is you're supposed to make things easier for developers and people who are using whatever thing you're advocating for. So CLI tools, super helpful. In this case, there's no API here. I'm just building an arbitrary to-do CLI, which I've done in the past manually. Like I've built so many different versions of a to-do, whether it's a to-do API or a to-do front-end app or a to-do CLI app. But again, just kind of illustrates the point. And you see, like, now it's going to give me an implementation plan, which I should have read. I would click this and I would read it, and it would tell me, hey, what's about to do, and go forth. Now, again, there's a lot of things you'd want to do to make sure that you're doing this effectively. As far as like thinking about, like, again, you want to understand things like test-driven development, so you understand what kind of tests to ask it for and when to ask for those tests. And again, have built an app before, so that way you can tell it, like, you can catch stupid things that it'll try to do. So again, this is not necessarily going to be a shortcut to not knowing how to program, but if you know how to program, this gives you superpowers. Like, I have built some really cool tools with writing minimal lines of code. Literally in just the last couple of weeks, it's just been, this has been a catalyst for me. But yeah, so this is a cool tool. And again, what I usually do is I try to focus on like reading what's going on here on the side, because what's going on here on the side is you're going to see its thought process. So like I can click here where it says thought process, and I can kind of read what it's thinking. You have to kind of be quick, but you'll oftentimes catch it maybe thinking a thought and going down the wrong direction, and then I can quickly enter in the chat and be like, no, don't do that, do this. So this doesn't mean you can just like set it and then just go like do the laundry while it's programming, unless you got a really strong structure that's pretty well documented and everything. It's something simple like this. I could probably walk away and it'll do it just fine. It's like this looks all pretty copacetic. I'm pretty sure this probably works just fine. See, it's all done. I'll have it write documentation. Documentation is also really important. Write a readme.md documentation file, and also write an architecture, and that's something that I've been doing personally, an architecture MD explaining the architecture of the project. Now, the reason why I really like the architecture.md is that every time I start a new chat, it doesn't know anything about what's going on. And having lots of docs and lots of tests, basically everything you usually were supposed to do when you were coding manually, but you avoided to do it because it was just extra work, are really, really beneficial here, and saves you time, because those tests make sure that it doesn't break things, because it'll realize, oh, it failed a test. Let me go undo what I broke. And then the documentation helps it understand the project more holistically and gives it somewhere where it can quickly find summaries of some of the key points it's going to need to kind of gravitate off. Okay. Again, in this case, if I really wanted to be more thorough about it, I'd ask it to write like some regression tests and stuff like that. But I mean, the idea is that you guys are getting the kind of the point of how this works. So you can see, like, I've not done much in the last 30 minutes, as far as like, I knew nothing about Zig, and we created a lot of great content on Zig. And I didn't write a line of code, and we have this nice like to-do list CLI tool that I might start using actually. Although I've built some other tooling that I'm already using, so I don't want to like over tool myself. But yeah, so hopefully if you are a DevRel, you find this video useful in learning how to leverage the tools that exist now to really kind of increase your productivity. So I'll see y'all later. Have a great day and enjoy.